The look on my son Mark's face when he realized the 1967 Mustang Shelby GT500 wasn't going to be sitting in his garage next week, it's a memory I'll carry to my grave. It was a mixture of pure, unadulterated shock and a greed so deep it actually made him look pale. 20 years of taking me for granted, 20 years of treating me like a walking ATM, and he never once considered that the old man in the hospital bed might still have one more gear left to shift. But to understand why he and his sister had no one to blame but themselves, I need to take you back to the beginning, to the grease and the grit that built the very things they tried to steal. I'm 72 years old now. My name is Arthur, and for 45 of those years, I ran a precision machining shop in a small town outside of Detroit. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I was born with a wrench in my hand. I worked 60-hour weeks, breathing in metal shavings and cutting oil, all so I could provide a life for my wife, Martha, and our 2 kids, Mark and Jenny. I paid for the private schools, the braces, the 4-year degrees at expensive universities, and the down payments on their first homes. I did it because that's what a father does. You build a foundation so your children can stand taller than you ever did. But while I was building their futures, I was also building my own sanctuary. It started with a 1963 Corvette Stingray, the split-window coupe. I bought it as a wreck in 1982 and spent 7 years restoring every bolt, every inch of fiberglass, and every stitch of the interior. Over the decades, that one car turned into a collection of 6. The Shelby, a 1969 Camaro SS, a 70 Dodge Challenger with a 426 Hemi, a 65 Pontiac GTO, and my personal favorite, a 1957 Thunderbird. To a lot of people, that's just a pile of metal worth about $500,000. To me, those cars were the physical manifestation of every Saturday I spent working overtime and every vacation I didn't take. They were my legacy. The first crack in the family foundation appeared about 5 years ago after Martha passed away. When she was gone, it was like the glue holding the kids' respect for me together just dissolved. Mark, who's a real estate agent with a habit of living way beyond his means, stopped calling to ask how I was doing. He only called when his commissions were delayed, and he needed $10,000 to cover his mortgage. Jenny, my daughter, became increasingly distant, influenced heavily by her husband Dave. Dave is the kind of guy who wears a $3,000 suit but doesn't know how to check his own oil. He always looked at my car collection not as a labor of love, but as a portfolio of underutilized assets. That should have been my wake-up call. I remember a Thanksgiving dinner 4 years ago where Dave, after 3 glasses of wine, had the nerve to tell me that I was hoarding wealth by keeping the cars in a climate-controlled garage. He said, "Arthur, you're not getting any younger. That Shelby alone could fund a very comfortable retirement community for you, and the rest could be distributed to the kids while they can actually use it." I didn't say a word. I just looked at him, then at Jenny, who was nodding along. I felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the November air. I kept telling myself it was just a phase, that they were just stressed. I was wrong.
The disrespect piled up like scrap metal in a yard. Last year, I had a minor fall and bruised my ribs. Mark didn't come to see me once, but he did send me a link to a senior living placement service with a note saying I should think about downsizing the house and the garage. Then came the incident with the Camaro. I caught Dave in my garage on a Sunday afternoon, trying to jumpstart the '69 SS without my permission. He told me he wanted to take it to a local show to drum up some business contacts. When I told him to get out, he had the audacity to roll his eyes and mutter that I was being a bitter old gatekeeper. If that was all, I probably would have let it go. I'm a patient man. I've spent months waiting for a single part for a transmission. I know how to wait. But then came the heart. 3 months ago, my doctor told me I needed a quadruple bypass. It was a serious surgery, the kind where you make sure your papers are in order before they put the mask over your face. I called Mark and Jenny. I told them I was scared. They told me they'd be there. The day of the surgery, I was laying in the prep room at Mercy General. The kids and their spouses were there, but they weren't talking to me. They were huddled in the corner of the room, whispering. They thought I was already sedated, but I was just resting my eyes. I heard Jenny say, "The appraiser said the Stingray could go for 85 easy. We can finally redo the kitchen and put the rest into the kids' college fund."
Then Mark's voice, low and sharp. "Forget the kitchen, Jen. I've already got a buyer lined up for the Shelby, a guy in California. If Dad doesn't, if things don't go well, I'm moving that car by Friday. We need the liquidity. That house in the Hamptons isn't going to pay for itself." And that's when I realized they didn't see me as their father. They didn't even see me as a human being. They saw me as a bank account with a heartbeat, and they were just waiting for the rhythm to stop so they could cash out. Something in me shifted that day. The fear of the surgery vanished, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. I didn't say a word when the anesthesiologist came in. I just closed my eyes and made a silent promise to myself. If I woke up from this, everything was going to change. I survived the surgery. When I woke up in recovery, I was in pain, tubes everywhere, but my mind was sharper than it had been in years. The kids came in that evening, putting on their grieving but hopeful faces. Mark even squeezed my hand and told me I was a fighter. It was the most disgusting display of hypocrisy I've ever witnessed. I waited until they left. Then I called my nurse. "I need my phone," I whispered, "and I need a private line." The next morning, while the kids were at brunch, probably splitting up the furniture in their heads, I called Harrison. Harrison has been my lawyer for 30 years and my best friend for 40. He was at the hospital within the hour. "Arthur, you look like hell," he said, sitting by my bed. "I feel like it too," I told him. "Harrison, I need to rewrite the will, every bit of it, and I need to move the titles on the cars, now, today." I spent the next 2 hours getting everything in order. Harrison was shocked at first, but when I told him what I'd overheard in the prep room, his jaw set. He knew how much I'd given those kids. He knew how much I loved those cars. We worked quietly. The hospital staff thought we were just discussing medical directives. They had no idea I was dismantling my children's expectations piece by piece. They had no idea what was coming. None of them did.
I spent 3 weeks in rehab, playing the part of the frail old man. I let them help me. I let Mark talk about how burdensome the house was. I let Jenny talk about how the garage was a liability. I nodded. I agreed. I told them we should have a big family dinner at the house once I was fully settled back in. A celebration of life, I called it. They loved the idea. They thought it was the night I'd finally hand over the keys. The night of the dinner arrived. It was a Tuesday. I had the table set properly, the good china Martha loved. Mark and Sarah were there, looking smug. Jenny and Dave were there, Dave already wearing a racing jacket like he owned the place. They were all smiles, pouring wine, talking about the future. "Dad," Mark said, leaning forward after the main course, "we're just so glad you're okay. And we've been thinking, to make things easier on you, we've prepared some documents. Just some simple transfers for the collection. It'll save on estate taxes later, and we can start managing the maintenance for you." He slid a folder across the mahogany table. I didn't even look at it. I took a slow sip of my water, feeling the weight of the moment. "You know," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I spent a lot of time thinking in that hospital bed. About legacy. About what we leave behind." "Exactly," Jenny chimed in, her eyes gleaming. "That's what we're saying." "And I realized," I continued, "that a legacy isn't something you're given. It's something you earn. I earned those cars. I earned this house. And I've realized that by giving you everything your whole lives, I've actually done you a disservice. I've made you soft. I've made you greedy." The smile on Mark's face started to fade. The color began to drain from Jenny's cheeks. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Mark asked, his voice tightening. "I'm talking about the conversation you had in the prep room at Mercy General," I said. The silence that hit the room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. The one where you were selling my Shelby before the surgeon had even picked up a scalpel. The one where you, Jenny, were picking out kitchen cabinets with the money from my Corvette. "Dad, you misheard," Jenny stammered, her hands shaking. "I didn't mishear a word," I said, standing up slowly. "I wasn't the frail man they saw in rehab. I was the man who had run a business for 45 years. And because I'm so concerned about your stress, I've decided to remove the burden of the cars from your lives entirely." I pulled a document from my own jacket pocket and laid it on the table. As of yesterday, the entire classic car collection has been moved into a private charitable trust. The Shelby, the Corvette, the GTO, all of them.
They are being donated to the Automotive Heritage Museum. They'll be kept together in my name and Martha's and used to fund a scholarship program for young mechanics and machinists, kids who actually know the value of hard work. Dave's jaw literally dropped. You gave away $500,000? Arthur, that's the family's money. No, Dave, I said, looking him dead in the eye. That was my money, and now it's the future of some kids who deserve it. As for this house, it's been placed in a life estate. I'll live here until I'm gone, and then it will be sold with the proceeds going to the same trust. Mark stood up, his face turning a dark, angry red. You can't do this. We're your children. You're leaving us with nothing? Oh, I wouldn't say nothing, I replied calmly. I've already paid for your educations. I've paid for your first homes. You both have careers. You have everything you need to be successful adults. If you want more, you'll have to do what I did. You'll have to work for it. This is insane, Sarah, Mark's wife hissed. We have debts, Arthur. We were counting on.
You were counting on me dying, I interrupted, and that was your first mistake. Your second mistake was thinking I was too old to notice. I pulled out one final envelope. These are the new copies of my will. Harrison has the originals. I've left you each $50,000. That's it. That's your inheritance. The rest, the shop property, the investments, everything goes to the trust. If you try to contest it, there's a no contest clause. You challenge the will, you get zero, not a penny. The silence returned, but this time it was heavy with the weight of their shattered expectations. Mark looked like he wanted to scream, but the cold reality of the no contest clause held his tongue. Jenny was crying, but I knew they weren't tears of sorrow for our relationship. They were tears for the lost Corvette. I think it's time for you all to leave, I said, gesturing toward the door. I've had a long recovery, and I'd like to enjoy my house in peace. They left without another word. No, I love you. No, I'm sorry. Just the sound of car doors slamming and tires chirping on the driveway. It's been 6 months since that dinner. My son calls every Sunday now. He's polite, he asks about my health, and he never mentions the cars. It's funny how a little bit of financial reality can suddenly improve a person's manners. Jenny visits once a month, and while things are still strained, she's finally started treating me like a father instead of a dividend check. I spend my afternoons in the garage. The cars are still there for now. The museum won't take possession until I pass, part of the deal I struck. I sit in the driver's seat of the Shelby, smell the old leather and the faint scent of gasoline, and I feel a peace I haven't felt in years. I built something with my life. I provided for my family, and when they forgot what that meant, I taught them one last lesson. My dignity is back, my legacy is secure, and for the first time in a long time, the engine of my life is running exactly the way it was meant to. Calm, powerful, and completely under my control.